is I'm going to talk about what I've been doing, and it's basically insane because there's 719 students and one of me, and I like to do things that leverage the crowd, but I think I'm the one who's actually being leveraged here. So we all know the benefits of PeerWise, so that's been totally obvious. It forces early interaction with the material, leverages the peer learning effects, but most of all is this incredible mark uplift that we see when students engage. And 5 marks, 5 real marks, 5% extra is a lot for every student. It turns Ds into HDs, it turns Fs into Ps. So it's a really, really big thing. It generates viral engagement. So if you have a look at these 2016 courses here, I had 250 students in the class. They were all meant to submit a question, most of them did, but look how many answers and comments you get in a fortnight. This is interchange between students on an unprecedented level. 10,000 interactions and 3,500 comments. Students exchanging views about biochemistry. There is nothing like that at all. So they put a lot into it. We often put a lot into it. I mean, you could take the Charles view and just let it run, or you could take the Dale view and start to try and choreograph it. I like to try and choreograph. I allocate topics. I like to go in and advise and mark and things. And it all pays off with the marks that we saw on the previous slide. It all pays off because we get great intel on their misconceptions and so on. But there is a lost opportunity nagging in the distance, and that is that after the semester's over and all this work has been spent, wouldn't it have been lovely to have actually just taken those questions that were nearly there, were nearly of exam quality, were nearly of fantastic revision pool quality, and just take them, just add that little extra magic to make them just right, to make them okay. Now, in Miguel's course, it's not so much of a problem because most of his students are already pretty cluey, and their advice to each other has been very good in moulding their questions just right. But my students at second year level need a lot more help. So the key plan was for me to join a partnership with them, all 719 of them, leverage their creativity, their ideas, their misconceptions, with my ability to spot very quickly where a mistake has been made, my ability to articulate things reasonably well, so that together we produce this amazing bank of questions that cover the entire syllabus at exactly the right level of granularity and address all the learning outcomes and are basically a sustainable product that can go on into the future. So this was the crazy setup. I allocated the students into 32 groups of about 22 students and called each of those a co-op. And that was a vain attempt to try and get them to cooperate with each other. And each student within that co-op was allocated a very specific, very clear topic. So they don't have to agonize, oh, what shall I create my question about? They've got a very clear question in mind. So I've just picked out 4 there. And not all of my students have massive heads like this, but you can see the four questions I've got. The 20-odd students in that group are all doing questions related to a particular concept area, like metabolism and starvation, for example. So basically a co-op covers 1 or 2 lectures. Within a co-op, there are about 24 students. Each student is responsible for a particular topic and responsible for producing a particular question. And they've already had 3 cycles with Dale. So they've been through the true-false thing. They've been through the criticising an existing question. They've been through authoring a question off their own back. They know about Bloom's. They know the standards that we expect. They know what makes a good question from a bad one. I give them extra intel on what style I like, for 2 reasons. A, because I'm an egomaniac, and B, because in the exam, I've written the questions. Therefore, the more they can make their questions like the style that I have, the more it's likely to resonate that this is a useful activity. I give them some ideas pretty much like Dale did, about how they might go approaching synthesizing a question. But the real business is in the way I stage the cycles. So here's you as a student. You've been given a particular topic. Here are your 23 peers. What I want you to do, first of all, is provoke the rest of the people in your group, the rest of the people in your co-op, to come up to reveal their misconceptions. This is exactly what Courtney was advocating, this idea that first of all you get intel about where people are finding things difficult. You get the people who think they're good explainers to rise, oh yes, I know this topic, let me explain this to you, Quisling, and let them have a go at explaining. That other people give ideas, that other people inject all of their uncertainty. Find out how your colleagues are thinking about the topic. Organise each other, explore things with each other, try and be creative. And basically, after a week of that, then write your draft multiple choice question. So in other words, you're writing your question cognizant of what other people find difficult and what makes a good explanation and so on. Now that means that the question that they put into the PeerWise cycle here is just got to be something that provokes their colleagues to reveal some of those things. So after a week, they write their draft multiple choice question, and again, they put that this time into a new PeerWise site, and this time their colleagues are giving them feedback on that question. You know, your options are rubbish, your STEM is awful, blah-de-blah-de-blah. So after a week of that, the question can now be revised. Each student now takes responsibility for revising their question in light of all this feedback. It was originally written in the light of all this intel. Now it's ready for me. Now my aim here is that because it's been through that process of development and quality control, I should be seeing something that isn't awful. I shouldn't be seeing 719 bits of rubbish. I should be seeing 719 bits that are 90% of the way there to being really good. Oh, there's some pigs just flying over there. I don't know whether you saw them, but anyway, what I do then is I go in and, I hopefully inject my magic and we achieve the perfection that I seek. And all of these 700 questions go into a pool of revision which everybody can benefit from. Now, in order for this to happen, two things have to be cemented into the student brain. One is that you have to engage early in this. There is no point in putting your provoking, true-false, misconception-seeking statement in an hour before the deadline of the first cycle, because you have to give your colleagues a chance to give you feedback. You can't put your question in at the last moment and expect any feedback. You can't expect to only give an author comments at the last moment. And this is a really challenging thing for our students because they're so used to this idea of balancing the late penalty with their schedule of deadlines. So the number of students that start saying, oh, can I just take my 5% a day late penalty? And I say, no, there's no point in submitting anything now because your colleagues have now done their revision of their question. I'm looking at it. There is no point in you doing anything. So the whole concept of what is acceptable timing of engagement is completely different when you have this sort of structure. Now, I'm glad to say that most of the students, at least 80% of them, were good at engaging early, and I'll show you how I fostered that in a moment. And the other thing is that for feedback to be useful, it has to be more than platitudes. It has to be constructive, informed, it has to be specific. And again, how do we train students? How do we mould that behaviour to make sure that that's what they do? And this is how I do it. I have a dashboard. Now, my dashboard evolves every day as more and more brilliant data tables arrive from Paul. Let me tell you, the data underneath the bonnet of PeerWise is so beautifully structured. If you like databases, you just start salivating when you see how beautiful the data is. And you can see that what I've built here is a very crude thing. If you want a nice one, I can build one for you that looks less ugly than this. This is fine for me. I don't mind a bit of ugly. And here I've got the student comments. This is the comments they've given their peers. This is how long they've spent on the question. Obviously, they might have gone and made a cup of tea in the middle, but so this 20 minutes here might be a furphy, but it's an indication, as you'll see in a minute. This is whether they got the question right or wrong. Again, who cares? This is the time course of their engagement. This is their rating profile and so on. So I can gain an idea of what a student, how they're engaging, what their time course of engagement is like. Now you look at that and think, okay, that looks all right. Now let me show you a bad one. That's somebody who has literally gone in, they've spent an hour answering 30 questions and they've just hammered the yes key, all right? They've spent an hour engaging, they've written the most perfunctory, pointless, useless bits of feedback, and so I have covered up my comments because I know that you are all of a nervous disposition. So note how they've actually also rated everybody really highly, a lot more than that median of 3. So I can tell in a millisecond whether a student is a good engager or a bad engager. There's certain things that I can pick up straight away. You'll notice that pretty much all of those things can be machine learned. Now, my dashboard is getting better and better all the time. I can look at the edit trail of questions. I can look at answering behaviour, who the thought leaders are, who are changing their answers in relation to who else has answered, and all sorts of things. And I can integrate my assessment of the questions as well. So if I've assessed a question quite poorly and a student has assessed it really well, that's an interesting tension, and vice versa. Now, all of this is a lot of work. You know, I mean, it's fine. I love doing it. It's not to everybody's tastes because there's this quite large organisational thing with 64 PeerWise courses to choreograph and lots of questions to assess, and a ridiculous system that looks like an airport boarding gate thing of courses closing and opening. So totally not to everybody's taste. Totally appreciate that. But this is an example of what you can achieve, and more importantly, how you can build an amazing goldmine of intel that will help in ways that are subject to everybody's imagination. So this is just literally finished on Sunday. I did the last of the marking, and already it's clear that the students have had a very interesting experience. They've experienced group work in a way that they haven't really had before, because they've been working as a group, as a cooperative, but they're still responsible for their own thing. So they're not getting a group mark, but they are benefiting from group activity. They're also benefiting because they see what I've said about their peers' questions. So they've been able to contrast their comments on their peers' questions with my comments. And that is a really illuminating thing for them. Already I have several hundred really good questions in the revision pool, because basically they've come in, I've looked at them, I've gone, yeah, with a bit of tweaking, that's in the pool. So immediately we have some quality revision stuff. It's unambiguous, it's academically correct, it's stylistically okay, it's along the lines of what they'll get in the exam, and it has that stamp of approval from me which gives confidence in the student cohort that they're now revising from something that is on topic. It's related to the learning outcomes in a way that will resonate properly. Some of the questions are outstandingly brilliant, just as the chap presenting in Paul's video showed. And I have to say that pretty much all of the other ones are better than what I would averagely get from most of my colleagues. I shouldn't say that because the head of school's here and he'll think I'll be being a bit naughty, but it's true. So already the students are engaging with the pool, and obviously that will go up massively, but there's an extra layer here, and that is that as they engage with that, and as they leave their ratings, and as they leave their comments, and as we see how those questions perform, that gives us even more intel. So not only do I have these hundreds of basically exam-ready questions, they're pre-tested. They're actually, as we speak, they are being tested by the very type of cohort of student that eventually will see them in an exam. So normally when we're a course coordinator and we ask our colleagues for questions, they may well pore over them for months in advance, or they may well do them at the last minute. Who knows? But one thing for sure is they're never subjected to testing on a student cohort until the exam. Well, these are. These are being rigorously tested in the most dynamic theatre of all. All of the misconceptions that they confessed in the first part, all of the misconceptions that they revealed in their explanations, all of these are incredibly revealing. Revealing for our teaching in the same way that it was for Tara, revealing for our future exam question setting in the future. The inspiration, the left field thinking, the graphs, the figures that they draw. I mean, I can look at these and think of 10 questions. They've thought of one question, I can see 10. So the leverage that I get in terms of inspiration is also massive. But of course, the real benefit comes in the research. There's so many, the data underneath here, from everything from the timing of their engagement through to the depth of their responses. All of this being so beautifully structured in the database tables of PeerWise present the most fantastic opportunity for research. Even as I go through the responses co-op by co-op, I can see that each co-op is very different. I've actually allocated them pre-work to actually have a blend of students. You know, there's a blend of HDs and not so good in there. But already it's clear that one co-op is producing creative, conceptual questions, and another co-op is producing really facty, you know, almost pointless questions. And so clearly there must be some thought leaders in there. Clearly this is a really interesting sort of little angle that I'm very keen to pursue. Why students ignore really great feedback and why they take the advice of people who are giving them terrible feedback. Really, really interesting thing to pursue. But the thing I'm most passionate about is the way that all of this opens up to machine learning. Being able to look at the depth of the responses and actually getting to a stage where we could actually get a machine to work out whether or not the students have engaged properly or not.